Hello everybody, Darren here, and welcome to my review for Stronghold Warlords. Now I'm just going to come right out and say it, this game is outdated, both in terms of its gameplay and its visuals, and it is vastly overpriced for what it is. Now it's not all that bad, it's still a Stronghold game, and the core formula of building fortifications, managing your economy, and defeating your opponents can still be fun. But there's a very simplistic campaign, very little innovation in terms of its design, and nothing really to set this game apart from its predecessors. Now, I really hate to be negative, I really, genuinely do. I was considering not even making this video, but I thought, look, that's just a disservice to you guys. I can't just do that every time something comes up, that's a little tough to talk about. And look, Firefly are a small studio, they sent me the game early, but I've got to be honest with you. This feels like a mobile game, and I'm really surprised they just couldn't find a publisher who was willing to fund a Stronghold game. It could have been a real return to form. Now, before we go any deeper and look at what the game gets right, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Skillshare offers classes ranging from creative writing, graphic design, video editing, and even game development. I've used it personally when I wanted to learn more advanced techniques for video editing. I took the class Animating with Ease in After Effects by Jake Bartlett, which was excellent because the class also provides art assets and project files, which are huge time savers. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there's no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes, workshops, as well as their new live classes. Skillshare Premium is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, and the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thank you to Skillshare. So, Stronghold Warlords is a base-building RTS game. You're given a plot of land that you're allowed to build within, and then you have to use that space efficiently to both build a strong defense and also a strong economy. Depending on the type of mission that you're doing, you'll either sit back and defend waves of enemies, almost like a build-your-own-tower defense game, or venture out and conquer enemy castles. If you've played a Stronghold game before, you're going to be instantly familiar with Warlords. Starting with your keep, you're going to have to place your stockpile, which is the building that stores your resources, and then the granary, which will store your food. Now, placing this is quite important, because unlike other RTS games, Stronghold needs all of its resources to be delivered by hand back to the stockpile before you can ever use them. So the further away you build something like a woodcutter, the longer it's going to take that worker to make the delivery. The same goes for food. You have to plant it, grow it, harvest it, and then take it back to the granary. Only once it's in the granary, then it becomes in your resource bar and people will actually eat it. When you expand this kind of idea, this philosophy across 20 resource chains, you really have to start thinking about where's the best placement for things. But ultimately, it just kind of boils down to the closer it is, the better it is. For instance, I was trying to get a little bit clever with it. I placed an armorer next to an iron mine, and I'd hoped that the iron ore would just be taken straight into the armorer, thus cutting down the travel time significantly. But instead, they just both go back to the stockpile to get their goods, and this is just how it's always been in Stronghold since forever. But I just thought maybe here there'd be some innovation, and the reason I bring this up is that there is very little innovation when it comes to the core formula. You're doing and building the exact same way you always have in Stronghold, so while that might be a benefit for some, I kind of expected to be thinking somewhat differently somewhere. The main differences when it comes to buildings are the temples, and they basically buff buildings that you place them next to. The other is the embassy. It generates diplomatic points, it's limited to 4, and it gets a bonus if you connect it with a road. No other building needs a road, and the road doesn't do anything else. I actually thought the road was kind of a nice idea. Maybe you could speed up your workers or something like that at the expense of stone, which you kind of need, you know, for walls. It'd kind of be a nice trade-off, but no, sadly not. So basically the economy works like this. As you produce more things, your people become happier, and as they become happier, you can raise taxes and make more money. If you raise taxes and your people aren't happy, their population will decline. And you need that population just to work your buildings, so that you can make weapons for the army. When it comes to soldiers, they require weapons, and most weapons are refined from either wood or iron. So a woodcutter will deliver wood to the stockpile, a fletcher will take the wood and make it a bow, and then that bow and some gold can be used to get a soldier. It's a fun system. It feels good to steadily raise your food economy and then start producing higher and higher quality troops. It's the aspect of the game I've kind of found the most fun. And it's just the core of what Stronghold is, you know, laying out an optimized economy and building defenses. It really hasn't changed. What's especially satisfying is placing defenses, laying out your walls with towers, gateways, and staircases. It all blends together really nicely, really well, and there's good pathfinding for manning the walls and towers. In fact, there's actually a free build mode, which is basically just a set of blank maps where you can just play around with the economy and layered defenses without really any restrictions. Warlords adds several smaller defenses as well, such as hoardings and barricades, and later on you can get defenses such as arrow turrets and mangonel platforms that sit atop the walls and actually fire back on the enemy. The building aspect of the game, while quite simple and straightforward, was the most enjoyable aspect for me. This is kind of where the fun ended. The campaign is split into 5 separate campaigns with about 6 missions in each. The first 3 campaigns really serve as a sort of tutorial. It really limits what you can build in each one, as it sets up a series of challenges for you to overcome and teaches you about the different buildings. Ultimately, everything kind of behaves the same. You know, a rice farm is the same as a pig farm, one just takes longer. You don't have to do anything different, so it's a bit weird that it really stretches it out over so many missions. There's not much story, there's kind of like a bit of dialogue in the beginning to set the stage, and then a sort of early 2000s 3D model will animate for like 5 seconds on a loop to give you a message periodically. I get that it's probably a throwback to the old games, but in my mind, it just makes the game look really dated.
King An hopes we will leave him in his castle. He will soon learn the price of holding out against the Qin. Can you feel the force of the river as it sweeps all before it, helpless before its sheer power?
Message from Thuk Fan.
To me, my warriors, we will win this day.
A message from Thuk Fan.
The revolution will not fall to our feet like the fruit from a tree.
For the missions, I actually found them really boring. Now, I just got done playing the game, and in all the missions I played, I can't remember one interesting thing that happened. One map that stands out had slowly rising water, and I remember thinking like, oh cool, that's gonna maybe affect how I build, might cut parts of my economy off over time, or some areas might get flooded and, you know, disrupt my economy. But nope, it doesn't affect anything, it's just in the background. It's really just there for story purposes, and it doesn't do anything. In that same mission, I actually won a little bit early, and I just had to wait 2 minutes for the clock to expire. Don't consider myself that good at this game, but the pacing seems to be off. So let's talk about one of the biggest new features of the game, the Warlords. Now, Warlords are neutral castles on the map that specialize in certain things. They just act as neutral kind of mobs, you know, they don't actually build up and recruit armies, they just kind of sit there waiting for someone to come claim them. Once you beat their army, you storm their castle and defeat their lord, who will then pledge allegiance to your side. Now, each lord is going to have this unique passive buff, and then also extra options that you can spend diplomacy points on. Usually you'll request a resource that's delivered over time, but the more interesting warlords can actually launch their own powerful attacks, or build extra defenses if you tell them to. It's a pretty cool addition. It kind of encourages you to venture out of your stronghold and attack or defend these neutral castles in order to kind of bolster your economy. When you capture one, you can level it up and make it more powerful, and the enemy can then capture it back off you, so you're kind of encouraged to defend them as well. Now, unfortunately, you can't fortify them any further or build in their area. I think that's actually a really big missed opportunity. Even just being able to build some walls or barricades, that way you'd actually have a game of territory control, which I think could be pretty fun. Without it, it means you kind of still just put all your resources into your own stronghold, so there's not really any risk-reward of trying to build further out. Where the feature really does just fall flat is in the diplomacy point system. You use this new currency to call in all these abilities from the warlords, and you earn the currency by doing nothing. It's just a passive thing that builds up in the background. Now, if you build an embassy, the rate is increased, and you're limited to building 4 of those, and that's kind of it. It's not really all that interesting or clever. It sort of feels like this side mechanic that was thrown into the game, rather than something that's designed as a part of the economy. If you build these things early on, you can just spend points over time to demand the warlords submit to you without ever attacking them. And you can just automate this to spend your points as you earn them. So you never even have to even open the screen. So basically, build 4 embassies, wait, and they're yours. I'm sure in multiplayer this is probably a bit more fun with, you know, multiple people trying to win them over by spending their points. But in single player, it's pretty much just your advantage. Overall, I think it's an interesting addition, just not really capitalized on that well. I love the idea of going out to kind of secure more resources, but I just don't think it's really done in a very interesting way. I think it'd actually be really interesting if you had to supply them with something in turn for diplomacy points, you know, make it part of your economy. Oh, I'm producing too many weapons or too much food, I'm going to give it to the other NPCs, or I'll purposefully build my economy so I can do that. I think that would make it much more interesting, because passively accumulating points and then just spending them, it's just super boring. So, let's talk about the units and variety. So there's only one roster in the game when it comes to multiplayer or skirmish. You just have access to everything. There are 4 lords in total that you can play against if you add AI. You have Thuk Fan, Qinshi Huang, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Genghis Khan. I'm sorry for anyone out there who's offended by that. I'm not sure if they do anything different. Their descriptions say that they specialize in things, and I know, for example, Genghis seems to use a lot of horse archer cavalry, but everyone has access to it. So I'm not sure there's anything unique about any one nation or lord that you fight against, which is kind of weird considering there's a Japanese lord mixed in there too, which thematically at least you'd think would field very different units than say a Chinese army or a Mongol army. What I did notice was Genghis likes cavalry so much that he couldn't actually capture castles, because in order to do so, you need to stand next to the lord after you down him. So basically, horse archers would down the lord from afar and then just idle outside his castle because they couldn't get inside. So one of the 4 AI lords in the game has a serious behavioral bug in the game. The unit variety itself is actually fairly strong. There are 10 units in the barracks, ranging from fast-moving cheap spears to heavy slow-moving sword units, as well as archers and crossbows and bannermen that buff units around them. In the military academy, you've got more unique variations like ninjas who can scale walls, and these can actually be banned from online games if you want. I guess they kind of break the idea of, you know, fortifying. There's also horse archers, samurai, and a powerful general unit. In the siege camp, there's also 10 units ranging from mobile defenses, siege towers and ladders, catapults, and powerful gunpowder units like rocket artillery. Unfortunately, there's very limited formation control, so it's basically impossible to evenly spread out your mantlets, which are supposed to kind of protect you from missiles. The siege units will do splash damage to the infantry and kind of like knockback damage, sending units flying around sometimes. Weirdly, the collision seems to be based on a 2D grid, so I got situations where I got hit by artillery and it propelled my soldiers up and over the walls of my enemy. It happened to a few of my tankier units who just stood back up and simply walked around and killed all the archers from the inside, so that's broken. There's basically no collision on units. This is obviously a design choice to kind of maybe fit things in better for pathfinding, but it just leads to some really weird looking combat and behavior. You sort of feel like you're just Zerg rushing everything into a tiny point in space and watching health bars collapse in on itself. Tactically, there's not much going on either, but I did sometimes grab some cavalry and go in for some flanks, which seemed to work well, but other than that, it's sort of a everybody in kind of affair. As for the gunpowder units, they are cool, it's a good addition, but only 4 maps actually have saltpeter, which is the required resource to make gunpowder, and there's only 9 maps in total. So, I mean, you can buy it from the market, the stockpile, but it's just really weird that this big new feature in the game is in less than half the maps by default as this native resource. Lastly, there's no rebindable keys and there's no way to build units faster than just manually individually clicking things. You can shift click to get extra resources, but you can't do it for units. I have no idea why. Control groups do work, but the game doesn't tell you that, so control plus any of the number keys will help you out. And that's kind of it. I don't really want to drag the game any longer. I like the building, I like the economy, but I can sort of just still get that in Stronghold HD. Regardless, I hope Firefly sees some success with it so they can actually just invest into another one in the future. There's clearly interest. The game had about 5,000 concurrent players on launch. I've seen far bigger games have far less players and still get DLC and sequels after that. Firefly are also making an iOS and Android online-only Roman city builder game, which is a fan of pretty much everything Roman. I have absolutely zero interest in. I wish they would stop chasing a free-to-play browser market or whatever and invest all resources into what they know works. According to the credits of this game, about 16 people made it, and it feels like it. With an IP like Stronghold, I really hope they can find a publisher for the next title. Slytherin, THQ Nordic, Paradox even, I'm sure someone can help get the series back off the ground properly. And a small aside, personally I think they should go back to 2D. A game like They Are Billions was a similar sort of wave defense economy building game, and it looked and played awesome. Not saying it's easy to do that kind of art, but I just think it would be better if they could find artists that can. Anyways, that is it for the video. Let me know what you think of the game. Am I being too harsh? Tell me in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Turtle left the game. All you have to do is get in and attack their lord, right? So that's all we gotta do, is just run up and get in there.
I follow the path.
It'd be so funny if I sniped him that way.
I will free them from their delusions.
Oh, he moved him out.
Ascend.
Yes! Suck it! Easy. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you want to support this series directly, you can click the join button to become a channel member. Doing so will get your name in the credits, as well as loyalty badges and emotes to use in the comments. If you don't see the join button, it means the video has been copyright claimed, but you can still join from the channel page on desktop. You can also link your account to our Discord to get a special role on there that will give you access to the Senate House and a few other perks.